Okay folks, we've got our neck blank from where we left off before. One thing I just wanted to mention was one of the most important things when you're doing a neck is your centre line. You want to always keep that centre line on so you know where you're heading. So what I like to do when I'm setting up to do the glue joint, I like to just have a dry run first. It's best to have a dry run. So, what we want to do is try and keep this part of the neck, this is what we're going to muck around with first. We want to keep this as square as possible. Okay, now what you want to do also before you start, you want to make sure that your bench that you're going to glue your neck joint to is like dead straight. You want to get a straight edge and make sure that there's no bow in that gluing deck. That's got to be dead straight, and that helps you keep your neck straight when it's glued up. So we set up our neck, and I like to use a block of something. This is a neck block for acoustic necks. And I know that this has square, this is dead square, this face and this face. So I want to cramp that on there. Okay, so I'll cramp that on there. I can then put a clamp over here like this, and that's going to keep this part of the neck, look, square off there, up there, and this is going to help me glue this joint here without it you ending up with a wacky headstock. Okay. So then once I've got this where I want it, and remember I said before I want to keep this part of the headstock, I want it to be just proud of this part. So once I've got it to where I want it to be glued, I then put a little mark on top. And that lets me see that I don't want that to, because once there's glue on this joint, it's really slippery. So that's going to let me see that that's where I want it to be when them two marks line up. And then I'd want to make sure I was able to keep this end of my headstock. Once I know that they're lined up, I would put a cramp on here, this end, tighten that up. So when there's wet glue on that joint, that's not going to be able to slide either way, back and forth. It's just, that's where it has to stay. And I usually like to use a couple of flat blocks like this, and I put masking tape over the face, so that when I'm sitting those on, like so, and I'm cramping, if there's any spill out of glue, that's not going to end up sticking my block to my neck. Okay. So this is how I'd glue it up. And I lay my first cramp down low, and I lay it over a little bit so that when I put a second cramp on, it's got room. And the second cramp goes on at the top. And just tighten it enough for the glue to squeeze out and the line to be a hairline. can put one around this way if I'm getting a bit cluttered. The other thing too is that once these top cramps are put on, I'd like to, if need be, I'd like to get a cramp in here, or clamp, whatever you want to call it, and I just tighten that down like this, and that would help keep that joint flat to my workbench that we know is dead straight. We check it before the glue dries off. We check with our square. If by any chance this looks like it's you know, starting to lay over, you can always use another clamp, and what you would do, exaggerated, you would lean the clamp back like this, and as you tighten up, and you'd keep the clamp towards the edge you want to push it, like a little bit over that side, and then when you tighten that clamp up, it should push that nice and square back to the square. So we know that that's the dry one. We know it's all looking like it's going to work. Also underneath here, when I glue this up, I'll put a little piece of grease-proof paper underneath that joint, so again we don't glue our neck to the bench. So we're ready to glue it up. So I know it's a bit of a pain, but you know, it's best to have a dry run and know where you're going, so you don't end up with hassles later. Okay. So I'm going to slide my piece of greaseproof paper under there. And that'll stay under there. We're ready to go. We know this block's square, like we said, and that'll hold the neck in the right position. We've got our mark on top, and we're going to glue up. Just check again, you know where you're putting your glue. You don't want too much glue, you just want enough. You'll get to know after a while. You know, if you put too much glue on, it just ends up spewing out everywhere. This is gonna spew out enough anyway, and you don't want too less, because obviously there's angle end grain that the glue is going to soak into. Angled end grain. So I'm ready to go with that. Sit this down like this. Make sure my two lines on top, remember, are in line. Ready to put my first cramp on. Like so. It's always really slippery, that, because of that glue. And remember the golden rule, constantly check things to make sure you're heading in the right direction. So that's fairly tight to the bench. That's not going to be able to slip. Okay. Put one of these on. I'm just going to do these up just snug for now. That is still trying to slip, but believe it or not. If you need to make an adjustment like I do, don't be scared. You got a bit of time, a little bit of time. I'm not going to edit this, I'm just showing you what happens, how we go about things. So just snug that up. Like I said, you have got a bit of time. Just snug for now. I've got another piece of greaseproof paper here, which I'm going to use to go in like this. I want to keep this, I'm just going to snug that for now too. I'm just keeping that glue joint pressed against the straight board. Like so. I can see enough to check that. Get my top one on. and double check. It's nice and square. It's a slight bit laying over. I'm gonna put a cramp on like we spoke about before. There we go, that's got it. And that's as sweet as. There's a glued up neck stock. Neck and headstock. Cheers. See you later.